deadly attacks have rocked the United States in a span of 24 hours, triggering massive security concerns ahead of Donald Trump taking charge as the US president on 20th of January. In the first incident, a man intentionally drove a pickup truck into a crowd of revelers at Bourbon Street in New Orleans early on New Year's Day, killing at least 15 people, injuring a dozen others. A black ISIS flag was seen flying from the truck's rear bumper, and the attack is being investigated as an act of terrorism as per the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The man driving the vehicle has been identified as Shamsuddin Jabbar, a 42-year-old US citizen from Texas. Meanwhile, in Las Vegas, a Tesla Cybertruck exploded outside the Trump Towers, killing one person in the vehicle. This was a Trump hotel in Vegas. It's now being investigated as a possible act of terrorism. There are reports of an attack in New York too, which happened in the borough of Queens. While Joe Biden has condemned the attack, US President-elect Donald Trump has blamed the Biden administration for this attack and called it an act of pure evil. Trump has also linked the attack to illegal immigration, saying that criminals coming in are far worse.
Truck hits the corner and comes barreling through people, throwing people like a movie scene, like real life, throwing people into the air. They falling under the car.
Right now, our number one goal is to ensure that we have the proper identification of the subject involved in this incident. Following that, our second objective is to determine whether this was an act of terrorism or not.
To all the families of those who are killed, to all those who are injured, to all the people in New Orleans who are grieving today, I want you to know, I grieve with you. Our nation grieves with you. We're going to stand with you.
All right, Cheryl Tay, who's the news editor at Business Insider, joins me live with more perspective. Thank you, Cheryl, for joining in on CNN News 18. Now, given that the FBI is treating the New Orleans attack as a terror incident and not overruling a link between the Vegas blast and the New Orleans attack, what does it speak of the security threat to the United States at the moment?
I think what's happening is that the U.S. is treating this not only just as isolated incidents for now, but expecting the potential and not ruling out the possibility that more information could come out down the road. Of course, there is a lot that we don't know yet, and we're waiting on law enforcement to give some clarity as to whether there are indeed links between the three incidents. Currently, that is unclear.
Is the New Orleans attack an indication that ISIS is still not completely wiped out of Middle East and has only evolved in its overall terror module, one that's shifted online, given that we've seen the ISIS flag being used? It was very much there on that truck that was used in New Orleans.
It's currently unclear if the attack in New Orleans was directed by or inspired by ISIS. There needs to be a clear demarcation between the two. But as of now, the fact that a flag was found at the site, that gives some indicator as to what the alleged suspect's motivations might be. In general, I would say that back in 2017, a U.S.-led coalition ousted some fighters from strongholds in Iraq and Syria And in 2019, former President Donald Trump at the time declared a victory over ISIS, but it seems that the ideology is still alive and well online. Just as soon as this year, experts in the field have warned that there could be burgeoning cells online that need to be addressed. So, yes.
Right. Cheryl, the FBI, with regards to the New Orleans incident, has in fact said that this can't be seen in isolation and that they are not overruling the fact that there could be a larger sort of gang involved. But having said that, what are going to be the immediate concerns in your viewpoint that the FBI will be focusing on in terms of its trajectory of the investigation? Because remember, reports are also indicating that there are going to be concerns in terms of, are there any more attacks planned? Are there more people involved who perhaps could be still at large within the United States?
What we do know about the suspect is that he might have had help in the attack. The FBI has not ruled that out, and investigations are continuing, even beyond New Orleans and into Texas and into his motivations online. We're getting a little bit more clarity this morning in the U.S. Right. So, yes, I think that there are several events coming up in New Orleans as well, and security is being boosted as we speak.
Cheryl, there's also the issue of immigration, which is being highlighted by the President-elect Donald Trump. The alleged shooter was not an immigrant. It's also not been confirmed if the Vegas incident had anything to do with terrorism just yet. So are these attacks also shaping the political narrative?
Most certainly. I think you're very much in the money with that. The incidents are definitely shaping the narrative in real time. Trump is responding to that in real time, talking about open borders in posts on Truth Social, pointing the finger at immigration. I need to note again that the alleged shooter, was not an immigrant and was a man from Texas. So while that might be part of the narrative, more needs to be found out about whether immigration has anything to do with the incident at all.
That's true. And in fact, these are developing stories, that too happening at a parallel level as we speak. Many thanks to you, Cheryl Tay, for joining in. It was a pleasure speaking to you over here at CNN News 18. And in fact, I'm also joined in by Leigh Waldman, our CNN correspondent, who's joining me live from New Orleans. Thank you, Leigh, for joining in. Could you share with us the latest that you're picking up from FBI's investigation so far regarding the suspect in New Orleans?
Well, what we're hearing right now from the law enforcement who is investigating this, we're hearing brand new that President Joe Biden will convene the Homeland Security team in the Situation Room in Washington, D.C. at 12:15 for a briefing on what's happening here in New Orleans. But we're also hearing law enforcement has concluded its search of a home in Houston that they believe is connected with Shamsuddin Jabbar, the suspect who is connected with this attack here in New Orleans. Now, the very latest we're hearing from the FBI is they have cleared Bourbon Street, which you can see behind me. They have cleared this as a crime scene. We've seen sanitation crews coming through, clearing off the street here, but the street is not officially open yet. That's a decision that's up to the New Orleans Police Department itself. So we're not seeing that officially opened to the public just yet. So they're trying to definitively link if this suspect, Jabbar, was directed by ISIS or if he was simply inspired by ISIS. They're also trying to determine if he was working alone or if he had others who were working with him.
Leigh, why is the FBI probing of a possible link between New Orleans attack and the Las Vegas explosion?
Right now, authorities are investigating any possible links between those two attacks, but they aren't at this point saying that the two are definitively linked. So there are some coincidences or similarities between these two attacks. Both of the suspects in these two cases are military veterans, and both of the vehicles used in these attacks are rented vehicles from the same rental vehicle site, Turo. So there's no definitive link at this point, but authorities are investigating any of these possible links between the two. We know that there's going to be an updated press conference from the Las Vegas Police Department investigating that crime there.
Many thanks to you, Leigh Waldman, for bringing us all those latest updates. Thank you for joining in. Thoroughly appreciate. And with that, let me bring in our next guest. I'm also joined in by Edward P. Joseph of John Hopkins SAIS. Thank you, Edward, for joining in on CNN News 18. Pleasure to have you, as always. 3 attacks, out of which 2 are being probed as linked incidents of terrorism. What does it speak of the threat to U.S. national security and the changing face of terrorism?
Akanksha, first, very good to see you. Happy New Year to you and, of course, to all of your viewers. And this is a reminder here of simply the vulnerability of any society, any open society, to this type of a suicide terrorist attack. This is not unique by any means to the United States. In fact, this very type of attack just occurred a few weeks ago in Germany at a Christmas market. And there's simply no real defense against someone who's determined to take the lives of innocent people. You simply cannot defend every possible public space. So there's an inherent vulnerability here that exists in any open society. And that's a fact. And so the emphasis goes on intelligence gathering. And of course, the United States has actually been quite effective at that, at penetrating a lot of organizations, at catching a lot of individuals who otherwise would have attempted such attacks. But you can't get 100%, Akanksha. It's simply not possible.
It's interesting that you talk about intelligence gathering, because that's why I have to refer to what happened in October. An Afghan national was arrested in October last year for plotting an election day terrorist attack in the name of ISIS, not to forget the recent German Christmas market attack. Given such threats, do you think that the U.S. security was not adequately ramped up around a critical timing like New Year's?
Akanksha, of course, you can, and there will be, as there are in any, and this is, of course, the inherent advantage of in a democratic society, is that there is accountability. There's accountability for officials. So there will have to be accountability for the police, for the city of New Orleans, for others, when they look at their security procedures and where they know in Bourbon Street, where a lot of people are going to congregate, what type of obstacles do they have in place? And they will do that. I'm confident the city of New Orleans and the state of Louisiana and others will do that. But it's simply, the focus cannot be on you have to prevent every single attack. You cannot. If someone walks into a store today and opens fire, there's simply no defense against that, against someone. Again, the real way, the most effective way, is through prevention. And the U.S. has been remarkably effective at penetrating a lot of these cells, at using informants and getting informants to discuss. There have been a number of attacks, potential attacks, where the informants, the FBI, in a very clever way, engages then in a conversation with the individual. And there was one where the individual was headed to Canada and bringing in his materials into Canada, attempting an attack in the United States. But Akanksha, there's a wider question here. There's a wider political question here as to what animates someone to do this. Why would someone here, an Army veteran who's lived in the United States, American citizen, obviously completely part of our fabric and our society.
And that's why I am coming to my next question, Edward. The U.S. President-elect Donald Trump was quick in attacking the Biden administration for its border wall policy, even though the New Orleans attacker is not an undocumented immigrant. Why is immigration going to be now at the forefront? Should it also not be about addressing the issue of terrorism, one that's emanating from Middle East?
Akanksha, I'm glad you raised that because it's absurd for President-elect Trump to reference this in the context of immigration. This was a U.S. citizen. He is an Army veteran. I'm an Army veteran. I mean, you can't get more established into our society than serving in our military services. So it's absurd to raise this in the context of immigration. It's not, and that has not traditionally or always been the source. 9/11, different case. But in many cases, there were other terrible attacks, an ISIS-related attack in California that did not have an immigration component to it either. So it's false to that. The wider question, Akanksha, is the ideology, this persistent ideology. What is animating this? And let's turn here. And I think, Akanksha, what's so interesting is 2025 as we enter this year versus 2024. 2024 was all about Gaza, Israel, phrases like globalize the intifada, the protests, and so forth. And then, of course, we had the dramatic turnaround in Lebanon, the dramatic turnaround in Syria with the fall of Bashar Assad. And I will just share with you, Akanksha, the question we should all be asking about the motivation for this nihilistic, destructive motivation that we're going to somehow advance our goals by attacking completely innocent random people.
Right.
And I refer you to two quotes here, please, from the New York Times, that in Lebanon, after finally, thankfully, the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, there were two different quotes that stand out to me. One Lebanese citizen said, you know what? Why do we citizens of Lebanon have to suffer because Israel and Palestinians have a dispute? We want to have a normal country here. We want to build our country. That's one Lebanese citizen. The other Lebanese citizen, obviously a partisan of Hezbollah, comes to destroy neighborhood south of Beirut, southern part of Beirut. And you know what he says, Akanksha? He says, the resistance continues. Right. Resistance to what?
Right.
What?
Right.
This is the question. You have one choice in the Middle East of citizens who want to build their country, who want to create a future for the children.
That's why, Edward, I want to ask, when you talk about Donald Trump's promises of ending the two wars, have they been premature promises given the security challenges now coming to the forefront in the United States? Given the fragile timing of these attacks also, you're days away from the 4th anniversary of the Capitol riot and Trump's inauguration. Are the three attacks now a wake-up call for the incoming Trump administration and the challenges that await him in his own country?
I think, Akanksha, yes, to some degree, and it's a good point that you raised. Of course, this is a reminder, simply a reminder, but of the threat that comes from this extremist ideology that promotes this nihilistic, destructive ideology that indoctrinates people into thinking that they're somehow accomplishing something by attacking these random people. One was a young woman who was about to enter nursing school.
Yes.
And so what have you accomplished by this destruction? That's why I'm telling you, those two different choices, to build or to destroy. Those are the two ideologies that we create. But yes, Akanksha, you're right. It's a reminder of the threat. But I don't believe the United States ever took its eye off the ball. I don't think that that's accurate. Again, I tell you, the FBI has caught a number of potential perpetrators in very sophisticated ways of trying to prevent. But you simply cannot prevent all attacks.
Let's see.
Please.
Let's see what's in store when Donald Trump comes to the White House on 20th. Many thanks to you, Edward, for joining in. It was a pleasure speaking to you as always. And I leave you with a report on these attacks. Thank you so much for watching. Up next is the Hard Facts with Rahul Shivshankar.